Hello, everyone, and welcome in to the Go 24/7 podcast. My name is Bryce Koon, and that is Glen West alongside me. We appreciate you if you're watching over on YouTube, or hey, you're maybe listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and maybe you're watching this before Thanksgiving. So happy Thanksgiving to you. And if you're watching it afterwards or listening, hope you had a fantastic Thanksgiving. Glenn, I'm going to ask you a quick question before we get into the serious business here. And this is a serious question. What food item, Brian Kelly was asked this yesterday, has to be on the table on Thursday for you?
Um, I'll probably go sweet potato casserole. My mom makes a really good sweet potato casserole, so that's what we'll always have on the table. That's always something that I like to dive into once Thanksgiving gets here. What about you?
Sweet potato casserole, close second. I'm a big hash brown casserole guy. My grandmother makes one, and as a lot of people know, not from Louisiana. My grandmother is sending her hash brown casserole with my wife's parents, so we can have that as a side dish. So that's going to be really really nice. But you and I were talking sweet potato casserole, man. It's like a dessert that you get to eat as a side. Like it's I'm taking the whole container to the room by myself if I can. So, but hey, after Thanksgiving, we're gonna have a big game on tap. Yes, it's an 11 a.m. kickoff. Glenn and I are going to get the early clock in and the early clock out on Saturday. The Aggies visit Baton Rouge. Glenn, you were, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you were at Kyle Field last year for this game. And it kind of brings us to our first point. Emotion should be high. Even in the midst of not playing for a title and all those things, you want to get revenge. And this is a chance to kind of exact that on A&M that kind of, I don't want to say ruined, but took a lot away from that season last year with that loss in College Station.
Yeah, they definitely spoiled, LSU's final quest there to try to get into the college football playoff. I think there was uh, definitely not a 0% chance that LSU could have squeezed in. Depending on, obviously you have to win the conference championship game too, so that kind of went out the window as well when they lost by 20 points to Georgia. But the A&M game was certainly a sour note to end the regular season last year. I remember it's the first time I'd ever been to Texas A&M, and when you walk in the press box there, it shakes. The press box shakes because of how close it is to the sections where they're stomping and doing whatever their chants are. I can't even remember
The
what they
Yell
were.
leaders. Come on, Glenn. Don't
Yeah,
disrespect the
yeah.
Yell leaders.
Yes, exactly. So, so we had a shaking press box, and then obviously A&M came out and did a really nice job in that game last year. And Brian Kelly said it on Monday, like these players are ready to play this game. I think that there's definitely some I wouldn't call it revenge, but some vengeance, some
Yeah.
we want to get this game back, and you want to finish the season strong, and I think that LSU is certainly in a position to do that. The way that their offense is operating right now. So, I believe the game last year, I can't recall exactly, but it was a game that you really felt the presence of Josh Williams not being there. Josh Williams was a huge part of last year's team. And, I think as we kind of honor senior night and all the seniors that are going to be around for this game, it's important to throw out how important Josh was to that team last year, and how valuable he could be this season as well in this year's matchup. And obviously from what he does from a blocking perspective, just being a real true gadget weapon that LSU's really thrown out there and done a nice job when he's had the opportunities. But it does sound like LSU's going to get Logan Diggs back, which will be good. It sounds like they're going to have who's the other guy that was
Whit Weeks.
Whit Weeks, yes. Whit Weeks was
Yeah.
the other one that we talked about yesterday with Coach Kelly. He's going to be back for this game. So, they'll be a little bit healthier. They'll be a little bit closer to what has recently been full strength. I mean, they still are missing a number of guys, obviously, with Mekhi Wingo and a bunch of the secondary pieces that aren't playing for you right now. So, but this is an A&M team that is definitely a defense first kind of group. They've definitely been very impressive. They're top 15 in the country, I think, in both the run and the pass. They're a top 10 defense in total yards allowed, I believe, for the season. So they've got a lot of 5- and 4-star talent still on that roster from these last several classes that they were able to bring in. And it should be a really fun, entertaining matchup. I'm looking forward to seeing how LSU approaches this last game of the year.
Yeah, just kind of touching on this fact, the reason we wanted to go with this first point was because Brian Kelly mentioned, I think he was asked the question, the emotions, did you learn anything? And he strictly stone faced. This was after he talked about that New England cranberry sauce where he was joking, and we know Brian Kelly's sense of humor. He says, these guys are ready. And I think it was one of those things that they understand what happened last year and what this is an opportunity to prove and beat an Aggie team that Glen is really coming. When you talk about emotions on the other side, an A&M team that you're going to be doing kind of an in-depth preview with our A&M side on this. When you face a team with an interim head coach, you kind of never know what to expect. But I kind of sit in the camp of where, look, A&M knows that they beat them last year, and they'd love to play spoiler, and I know also too, the guy that's their interim head coach, they really, really like, and those guys have played well for him. So your kind of thoughts on what kind of team do you think A&M walks into, maybe a mentality wise, into Tiger Stadium on Saturday?
Yeah, they're very much behind Elijah Robinson right now, who's their interim head coach, and I don't know that he has a great shot of getting the job after the season, but there's definitely been some buzz that they want to keep him around for whatever
Mm-hmm.
next coaching job there is. Very much like a couple of years ago when you had Brad Davis stick around as the interim head coach after LSU uh, went out and hired Brian Kelly. So, yeah, I do think that this is going to be a team that comes in. I mean, look, they have nothing to lose. I mean,
Yeah.
they have a lot of talent that I think can certainly disrupt a lot of what LSU's positive momentum has been. We talked with Kelly a little bit on Monday about um, if this was the best defense that he thinks LSU's going to be facing this year, and he agreed. I think he said just from a physicality and from a talent standpoint that this is probably the best group that this offense has gone head to head with all season long. So that's going to be a really great challenge for Jaden, for obviously Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas and all these superstars that have had so much attention over the last several weeks. This will be a really good last test for that group uh, to all play together and see if they can't put together one last final really phenomenal performance. And so emotions are definitely going to be up there in terms of just the intensity. And I think A&M, you got to come in expecting A&M's best shot. I mean,
Yeah.
they may not have their head coach from the last several years, but they've still got a lot of talent in that roster, especially on the defensive side of the ball. We'll talk about offense in a little bit. I think they have some intriguing pieces on offense as well, even though they haven't been as consistent on that side of the ball as you would have hoped, or that you would have expected. But LSU's done a really nice job offensively in terms of just their consistency level. But I think it's going to be really challenged this weekend with a pretty stout front that A&M has, and some really talented pieces in the back half as well.
Emotions should be high, like you mentioned. Senior Day, another aspect of this. Brian Kelly talked about that as well, being able to honor some of the guys that have helped establish the foundation, most notably Josh Williams and Noah Kane. And you can read about that more on our site over at Go
Yeah, Jaden
24/7.
Daniels certainly
Jane
is
Daniels, yeah.
part of that. And then I'm going to write about him in three players for tomorrow, but I also I mentioned Greg Brooks in there as well. I think that the
Hmm.
impact that he's had over a 2-year span, whether it's on the field, off the field, you can really see LSU's missing him right now in the secondary. And obviously, with what he's going through right now, you hope that he's continuing to recover and is getting better each and every day. But he's somebody that can't be forgotten, I think, in all this either, because he's definitely made an impact on this team in the first in its kind of initiation, its first introductory to Brian Kelly and what they're hoping to build here over the first couple of years.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. We move on. We touched on this in yesterday's podcast. If you had missed that, talking about kind of the awards that LSU's up for. But this is an opportunity, Glenn, for Jaden Daniels to go make another statement. Brian Kelly talked about this. This is probably, when you look at just pure talent across the board, one of the best, if not the best defenses that LSU's going to face. LSU not having that conference title game. They've got one less game than Bo Nix, or he has one less game than Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr. will have in this season. That
Yeah.
being said, what type of statement can Daniels make to that committee with a really, really great performance on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, like we mentioned here on the offset, this is a very talented defense. I think at pretty much every level, they've got some really great pieces that they've been able to work and get some consistent play out of, whether it's Edgerrin Cooper,
Mhm.
Shamar Turner, even a former guy like Jacoby Matthews has done a really nice job. Bryce Anderson was an LSU recruit at one point that LSU was trying to get on board. I remember that recruitment pretty well. So they've got a ton of talent on that side of the ball. I think they do a really good job of getting pressure off the edge with guys like Turner and Edgerrin Cooper. Cooper's got 16 tackles for loss this season. So,
Yeah, it's good.
and I think Shamar Turner's got 10 and 6 sacks. So they do a really good job of getting after quarterbacks. They've been pretty consistent in doing that. But this is where you're going to have to see Jaden Daniels really kind of use that dual threat ability to his advantage once again. I mean, he's done such a good job of that over the last 2 weeks in particular when he's gone for, what is it, close to 1,200 yards and uh, he had like he had 8 touchdowns last week,
Touchdowns last
and
week.
five the week before, 6 the week before. I mean, he's playing at another level right now, and
Yeah.
it really does feel like this is gonna be the last challenge that you could really see him. I don't want to say slip up, but they're going to challenge him.
Yeah.
They're gonna definitely try to get after him. They're gonna send pressure. They're gonna but the biggest thing here that Brian Kelly has said over the last couple of weeks that's kind of stuck with me is that whatever defenses have been able to do or trying to throw at LSU, Jaden's been able to really master it and learn quickly from it and really do a nice job, I think, of just moving on and really being able to attack the weaknesses of what he's being shown from opposing defenses. So that's going to have to be in play, whether A&M decides to load the box and come after him or whether they decide to drop 7 or 8 guys. He's going to have to be ready for all of it. And I think he has shown, throughout the entire season that he's very much capable of making those in-game adjustments pretty quickly and leading the offense to pretty consistent success. So I'll be looking for that for sure from Jaden. I think he's done a remarkable job. And if he goes out there and he puts up another, 300 yards passing, another 100 yards rushing, kind of gets
Mhm.
to his average and gets 3 or 4 or 5 touchdowns in this game, he's going to do everything that he possibly could have in these final 3 games to make that Heisman case, to make that postseason case that he's the best player in college football. We'll see if writers around the country agree. But he's done pretty much everything to this point to make the best case possible. And if he does that again on Saturday, which I would expect him to do, then I think that you can at least go to sleep at night with knowing that you kind of left it all out there and didn't really and it was just kind of out of your hands kind of deal.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I want to mention this too because yeah, look, we're gonna be watching Malik Neighbors, we're gonna be watching Brian Thomas Jr., watching these other weapons. I'm excited to watch this Joe Moore Award semifinalist group go up against this defensive line. Like, big on big, man on man up there up front. We've talked all season. You mentioned this in yesterday's podcast. It seemed like we've got an offensive lineman every single week, and every single week they talk about this game's going to be physical, and we love that. And this is a game where you mentioned guys like Shamar, um,
Turner.
Shamar Turner there, Shamar Stewart, another one you have. You also have Walter Nolan, McKinley
Yeah.
Jackson, a veteran player. I mean, you have a lot of players up front that not only have played a good amount of football, they're really, really at the tops when you look at top tier talent, when you kind of look at draft boards in the future. I mean, this is NFL level talent. The guys like Will Campbell, guys like Emory Jones are going to go up against Charles Turner. I mean, Garrett Dellinger, and just name somebody. This is where you kind of get that chance to prove on tape why you think you should be a pro football player. I'm excited to watch that matchup offensively. And did you realize how crazy it might sound, Glenn? We might look back when you said Jaden Daniels, if he just does his average 3, 4, 5 touchdowns, like that's just become the average of what Jaden Daniels has been able to do. It's quite nuts. It's quite
Yeah.
nuts. But any other matchups offensively that you're excited to watch, outside of Jaden Daniels?
Yeah, I mean, we've heard so much this offseason or how important it was for Malik Neighbors to learn all 3 positions this offseason and how versatile they moved him around, whether it's in the slot and it's the boundary or outside, one of the outside receiver spots that he's been so dominant with that I think probably part of this that kind of gets overlooked is just how impressive that it is that he knows all those positions um, and how that's really opened up the offense throughout the entire season. I mean, they knew coming in that defenses were going to key in on him, and they haven't really been able to slow him down at all for much of this year.
Hmm.
That's a big credit, I think, not only to what Daniels is doing from a passing perspective, but of course with what Neighbors is doing as well from a pass catching perspective and a route running perspective, and knowing just being extremely knowledgeable about about the offensive side of the football. So he's done a really nice job. I think whoever he's matched up against, that's going to be a fun matchup. But outside of that, probably like to see if this running game can kind of, I don't want to say bounce back, but in all the tough matchups LSU's had defensively this year, um, the run game's been a little bit more of a struggle to get going than it has been
Yeah.
for the passing game. And that, whether it's Florida State and Alabama, that those games there really were the ones that stick out to me, where you really could have used more of a complementary game with your running backs. And when I say running, I mean from the running back position, not with what
Hmm.
Jaden's been doing, because Jaden was great against Alabama from a running perspective. But would like to see Logan Diggs, Josh Williams, Caleb Jackson, Noah Kane maybe gets a couple carries. But if you can be a little bit more complimentary with what Jaden's doing offensively through the passing game, it'll not only open up things for him, it'll open up running lanes for all those guys, and that kind of ties back into what the offensive line's been doing. So, I do think that I would like to see a little bit more, complementary football with the running backs in a matchup like this.
Yeah, and I think obviously, we've mentioned it. You could look at it two different ways. Have they needed to be such a big part in the running department? Because I think one thing we have seen is blocking. Like Josh Williams over the Florida game and the Georgia State game showed that prowess. Noah Kane has been a guy over the past couple of weeks as injuries to Logan Diggs, the John Emery Jr. injury, obviously too. All of these things, Glenn, Noah Kane has been able to get the tough yardage. It's not the flashiest plays, and so I don't know. I think that's a good conversation to kind of have with this offense going forward. We end it off with this, and this is the age-old question every single preview week show: can the defense play better? And Glenn, they're going to be facing a young quarterback who impressed in towards the end of the game against Mississippi State a couple weeks ago. They played Abilene Christian, a good game for them too over there, but when you look at what Jaylen Henderson brings to the table, a redshirt sophomore, he's a transfer. It's dynamic. Bobby Petrino, regardless of your thoughts about him, can call a really good offense. And A&M at times has suffered because of offensive lulls. Your thoughts on how LSU's defense maybe one can match up, but how important would be able to really end the regular season on a high note against a quality SEC opponent?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that this is a guy in Jaylen Henderson who's a little bit more mobile than I think people might expect. He's got 132 yards gained in the 3 games that he's played. He's also, lost, 38, so the net negative there kind of averages out to a little bit lower because of sacks and whatnot. But he's a guy that can get upfield a little bit on you, and we know what LSU's struggles have been this year defensively. It's been kind of containing quarterbacks that can extend plays with their legs. And so I do think this is going to be a very interesting matchup for LSU. I mean, look, they haven't been very dynamic offensively, and I think a part of that is why they decided to move on from Jimbo and kind of go in another direction as a program.
Yeah.
So Henderson really hasn't blown people away, I don't think, yet with his throwing ability. He's only started and played in 3 games. He's got about, I think, 400 yards passing and 4 touchdowns. He's completing about 65% of his passes, which is pretty good. But when you've got guys like Evan Stewart on the outside, you'd like to see them kind of utilize those weapons a little bit more. And so I think that's certainly something that they're continuing to work through here as we enter this final game. They've got some really good weapons, like Stewart and Anaya Smith. In the backfield, they've got Le'Veon Moss, who's a former Louisiana recruit, a
Hmm.
guy who LSU recruited pretty hard. Reuben Owens is a former 4 or 5 star talent. He was up there as one of the best running backs in the country, either last year or the year before. I can't remember what exact recruiting cycle he was in, but he's a really dynamic player and a guy that they can utilize out of the backfield from a passing perspective at times as well. So they've got some real weapons here, and they've got I know that they haven't really put up the numbers as an offense that would warrant a lot of these 4 and 5 star talents that you'd like to show off, but they've got talent, and they've got they've done a nice job, I think, of kind of weathering the storm after losing 2 quarterbacks. I mean, look, when you're on your third string quarterback at this point in the season, it's tough on any offense, and so
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how they kind of bounce back and having another week with Henderson, kind of taking all the first team reps. But that's also going to be big time, just kind of the scouting for LSU is going to have to be on point this week, because you are going to go up against a guy you don't have a ton of film on. You're going to be scheming up a game plan that will certainly try to be a little bit more versatile in terms of what he can do as a passer and as a thrower, and then also as a runner as well. So, it'll be very interesting to see just kind of how LSU bounces back from this one. And, because they didn't get off to a really great start against Georgia State. They gave up 14 points in the first couple drives. They, allowed Georgia State to really hang with them for about a quarter and a half, 2 quarters there, where it really felt like that game was a little closer than it needed to be. So if you're an LSU defensive player, all you can really do is go out there and just try to get some good film out. The last week of the season, it's going to be a lot of guys that LSU's trying to re-recruit back to the roster next year, I would imagine. And so it's going to be very important to see that those guys get some developmental film up on tape, and that LSU's coaches can feel good about kind of going into the offseason what they want to work with those players on.
A veteran weapon for the Aggies, and Ananias Smith, been around the program a long time, redshirt senior. When asked the question this week, he said about LSU's offense being so potent, and the opportunity and the pressure to have to go point for point with them. He said, I believe that the pressure to do that is a privilege. They're a really great offense, but it's also, we believe that we are a really great offense. The pressure for us to be able to go out and make plays, it just comes with the game. You can't go out and just harp on the fact that their offense is good. You have to go out and play your game and let the scoreboard speak for itself. A lot of coach speak in that answer from a veteran football player there, Glenn. As we kind of wrap it up here, and we don't have to do straight up here predictions, but what I do want to kind of get is your final thoughts here. If this game does get into a track meet, I think that's where a lot of teams don't want to go with LSU. So you give me your kind of no score predictions. We'll hold that later in the week and direct people to the website. How do you feel like is the recipe for an LSU win?
Yeah, I would probably say, the biggest recipe for an LSU win to me is going to be, can Jaden Daniels continue to operate this offense with the level of efficiency that he has the previous couple weeks? I mean, even against Alabama, like the first 2 quarters, 2.5 quarters, LSU was operating at a very, very efficient level against a pretty stout defense in Alabama. So, can they carry that over for 4 quarters against a team like A&M, but that does have a pretty good defense? I don't know that you'll need 4 quarters to really pull away from this team. I do think that LSU is capable of putting up some big numbers early in this game and maybe setting their foot down a little bit on A&M and getting out in front, but by a good margin. But the clearest path to me is, man, just let Jaden Daniels loose. Just let him be Jaden Daniels and get the ball to Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, Kyron Lacey's now, I think, got 2 or 3 straight games of 100 yards and a touchdown. So, they've just done a really nice job of spreading the ball around to their weapons. Having Logan Diggs back, we'll see how much he factors into the game plan, but certainly you feel good about what you got with Josh Williams and Caleb Jackson and Even Trey Holly got a couple carries in that Georgia State game. Maybe lean into him a little bit as well. So I just think this really comes down to, can LSU's offense continue to operate efficiently? And if the answer is yes, then I do think that LSU is able to pull away and do a nice job of kind of finishing off the season on a strong note, like we've been mentioning.
Yeah, the recipe, it might be just kind of easy for people to sit there and say, yeah, it's one of those things where the LSU offense puts up 45, 50 points. You feel like they're going to win. I think I'd also like to see this defense make big momentum shifting plays. I've talked about that all season long. I think that's another recipe. If this defense can force a young, inexperienced quarterback into some tough decisions, that defensive line plays well. And a lot of guys potentially playing their last game in the purple and gold, play with a little chip on their shoulder. That would be a good way to go out in front of Glen. I don't know. I've never been a part of a day game in Tiger Stadium. We expecting a good crowd because it's a big opponent.
I don't know. 11 a.m. after Thanksgiving. I mean, we saw the Georgia State crowd. I mean, I know it's Georgia State, but
Yeah.
I would hope so. I mean, I think LSU's doing everything they can to try to promote this game. Final time you'll get to see this historic offense out there. I mean, if you could get back in a time capsule and go back and watch 2019's offense one last time, I mean, I'm pretty sure that would be a sellout crowd. So,
Yeah.
This is an offense that's extremely entertaining to watch, and one that you can't expect to see a whole lot of in terms of just the remarkable success that they've had throughout the entire year. So I would think LSU gets a good turnout here for the final game, but the holidays definitely do kind of always seem to throw a little bit of a wrinkle in that, but we'll see. I think that they'll have a good crowd.
Awesome. Go 24/7 podcast. You can catch us wherever you like to listen and watch here on the YouTube channel. We appreciate you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you turn on notifications and head over to our website down in the link down below where you can catch out not only just preview for this week, but transfer portal talk. We've got a great VIP deal that you can take advantage of. The Black Friday special, I'm going to read it off right here. 75% off an annual VIP pass. I think that comes out to around $26, $27 plus tax. Great deal. And you get to hang out with myself, Glen West, Dylan Sanders, and Sonny Ship. So we appreciate you watching, appreciate you listening. Hope you have a fantastic Thanksgiving, and we will catch you next time here on the Go 24/7.